This is the 1.28 gallon version of the Kohler Kingston toilet, introduced all the way back around 2010 or 11, and would be made up until around circa 2019 or 20, when it would be replaced with the Kohler Kingston Ultra. Probably for the better, as you'll soon find out. This might be, in my opinion, the worst generation of Kohler Kingston ever made. Sure, the 1.6 gallon Kohler Kingston was also pretty crappy as well, but this is a lot worse. Which is funny considering that most people were really excited when this generation of Kingston was made. But as the years go by, we understand that this thing sucks. Let's find out why that is today. The overall design is interesting to say the least, outside of the bottom portion, which looks stupid. There's the trapway you can see right there. Although the top portion of the toilet definitely looks interesting with these accents. You can kind of see them here. And there's the trapway opening, which is like an arch-shaped opening, although it's very long. Let's have a look at a flush. I'll be honest, it's not very interesting. As you saw in the flush, it does have front ram jets to aid the flush as well, but that unfortunately does not matter because these things pull terribly. These things are constantly known for getting things stuck in the trapway opening and shredding like crazy. Even on powerful pressure, it does its exact same crap. Even worse than the 1.6 gallon Kohler Kingston, and dare I say it, worse than the Kohler High Crest. I don't know how something with front ramjets to aid the flush can achieve that, but this toilet does it just well. It's ridiculous, honestly. Not to mention, the performances on these are also pretty garbage as well. I don't know how these things clog as much as they do, but it's just as terrible as the Kohler High Crest. Most of the times, clogs happen towards the opening, which means stuff gets stuck in the opening and it clogs very frequently. The front jets don't really do much to avoid that problem most of the time, which is kind of pathetic. Now let's have a look at ball rinse. As you can kind of see, the ball rinse is absolute crap. Nowhere near as terrible as the 1.6 Kingston, but still pretty crappy. It has straight down ram jets, which doesn't help anything, and the background seems to be missing some rinse as well. It might be hard to see, but it's barely missing some of the areas in the background. It's pretty crappy. And that is the 1.28 gallon version of the Kohler Kingston toilet, probably one of the worst Kingstons ever made. This thing definitely had potential, but the execution of it was pretty terrible. From the pulling factor to the ball rinse to even the flush being kind of stale. I don't see one good thing about this toilet at all. But let's put it into the grading scale and let's grade it. The overall design of the 1.28 Kohler Kingston is interesting to say the least, but also is a bit lacking. The only interesting part about it is really the top portion, while the bottom portion, we don't really talk about that. Just don't look at it and it looks fine. Compared to the Kohler Kingston Ultra, it doesn't look as good. But in regards, I give it a 5 still. This thing has so many quality issues, it's not even funny. From the pulling factor to the terrible performance, to the ball rinse even. Yeah, safe to say, it sucks. It gets a 2. Consistency, on the other hand, seems to be pretty good. However, it feels like it might be just a me thing, but I feel like the trapway openings can be a little lanky sometimes compared to some others. That, though, might just be me. I give it an 8. The trapway seems competent at first until you get to the opening, where it looks a little bit sketchy. It may look like it may not perform that bad until you realize how terrible it is. We'll get to that later, but the trapway gets a 4. I'm going to be honest, the flush is not very interesting at all. It's just a straight down flush with some front rim jets, which I definitely think was done better on stuff like the Crane Sinton, for example. I give the flush a 4. It's just boring. Tell me how something with front rim jets to aid the flush causes so much shredding issues. The pulling factor sucks on this, and I don't understand why. These things shred like no tomorrow, and it's really hard to find one that doesn't shred. The pulling factor is terrible. It gets a 2. Speaking about sucking, the performance also sucks. It's Kohler high crest levels of terrible. To me, it's definitely the trapway opening causing most of the issues on performance. I don't know why that is, considering that it has a decent sized trapway, but the opening definitely causes the most problems out of anything when it comes to performance. The performance sucks. It gets a 2. While I don't think the Barnes is just as terrible as the Kohler Kingston of the 1.6 gallon variation, the Barnes is still crap. The rim jets are straight down, the back rim doesn't really get rinsed that well, and even the front struggles sometimes. It's kind of a mess. The only really saving grace is the front jets getting most of the stuff in the middle, but that's about it. The Barnes is crap, and it gets a 3. Due to all the issues I've mentioned with this toilet, survivability is easily a 2, and nothing higher than that. Let's talk about the non-existent value of this toilet. I remember back in the good old days when we were all excited about this new generation of Kohler Kingston. A breath of fresh air and some interesting design choices. Only to realize how worthless this thing is later on in life. This thing has so many flaws, even the 1.6 Kingston is looking at it staring, oh, at least I'm not that bad. The pulling factor sucks. The performance sucks. The flush, boring. The Barnes, crap. And the quality control is definitely terrible. There is not one good thing about this toilet at all. Even the design is not as good as the Kohler Kingston Ultra that came later. This might easily be the worst generation of Kohler Kingston ever made, and I don't see anything that could top it. But at this point, you'll never know. This is Kohler after all. They could somehow sink lower than this. Safe to say, it gets a 2. The final score of the 1.28 gallon version of the Kohler Kingston toilet is a 33 out of 100. Just when you think it can't get worse than the 1.6 gallon Kohler Kingston, it somehow gets worse. You know, for a toilet that had a lot of potential, a lot of it was missed, and it ended up being a lot more worthless than the 1.6 gallon Kohler Kingston. Which is quite funny considering that we were expecting the opposite, but reality sucks sometimes. If you thought the 1.6 Kingston was the bottom of the barrel, well, this is beyond the bottom of the barrel. Now let's flush the cup. I was not joking about shredding, was I?